What are we doing, Charlie?
Avoiding everything around us.
In our last video, we had just sailed into El Puerto Santa Maria in the Bay of Cadiz. Join us now as we explore Cadiz, the surrounding bay, and then sail to Barbate, our furthest stop south in Atlantic Spain. As I said in the last video, Cadiz was founded around 1100 BC. That makes it around 3100 years old. Wow! This also makes Cadiz one of the oldest cities in Europe. The Phoenicians first settled in the area and used it as a trading post, calling it Gidir, which means something like the wall or maybe the stronghold. The city was subsumed into the Carthaginian Empire during the First Punic War, when it was conquered by a rather well-known general from Carthage named Hamilcar Barca. He was the father of Hannibal of Elephant over the Alps fame. Near the end of the almost 2-decade-long Punic War, which was essentially a battle between Rome and Carthage, or more accurately, between Rome and Hannibal, Roman general Scipio Africanus conquered many of the former Carthaginian cities in Iberia, which is now Spain. Interestingly, Scipio Africanus also fought one of his most decisive battles to wrest control of Iberia from Carthage at a place called Carthago Nova, a place that's going to appear in our later Sail Calypso travels. The city walls were built after Sir Francis Drake, Lord Charles Howard, Admiral Robert Blake, and Sir George Rooke James all tried attacking the city. Despite the unwanted attention given to Cadiz by other English-speaking people, Charlie and I had a great time in this area of Spain.
What are we doing, Charlie?
Avoiding everything around us.
Like all those jet skiers.
And then these guys, 2 more coming out the marina.
It's gonna go windy noise.
Rota has a long history alongside Cadiz and was known as Speculum Rotae by the Romans. It's also well known to modern-day NATO navies. Still in the huge Bay of Cadiz, Rota is a pretty tourist town just at the northwest corner of the bay. We needed to fill up on water, but after that I was really interested to see what Rota was like, since I'd read about it from about the age of 18, sometime last century, when NASA had decided to designate it as one of the transatlantic abort sites for the space shuttle in case they had an engine out problem and couldn't get to orbit. Goodness, they never needed to use it. As it turned out, the Gulf of Cadiz side facing west was pretty, and the town itself was really interesting. We also happened to arrive during a religious festival, which was also interesting to watch.
You there?
Yeah, that's good.
There.
I'm going to turn up behind them slightly.
Yep, good. We need to go to 16 so we can hear them. If they warn us to keep the hell away or something. I don't want to get shot.
Okay, I'm just going to pinch on this heading until we can attack behind them.
Yep.
Because currently they're just directly where the wind is.
Yeah, that ship had 650 Marines on it, the guy said.
Wow.
Oh, Joel. Yeah, great noodle. What do you get, Phil?
checking the banks on either side on Navionics. Well, where are we? We are right now about 5 miles just west of Cape Trafalgar. This is the last big cape that I wanted to go around, that I've actually thought about. Cape St. Vincent, Cape Finisterre, Cape Trafalgar. And here we are. And obviously for British people this resonates because in 1805, October of 1805, Horatio Nelson won a decisive battle for the British. It's probably one of 4 most decisive, important battles for the British Empire. That's what happened here. We'll give a little more of an overview when it's not so windy, not so much wind noise out, but it means a lot to me to be here. And as we turn now, excuse me, we're just going into the Straits of Gibraltar. So where we end up in Barbate is the start of the Gibraltar Strait, so it's going to be pretty interesting from here on. Not like it wasn't up to this point, but it should be very, very interesting going forward. The Battle of Trafalgar in October 1805 was a battle that took place almost exactly where we're sailing. It brought together 33 British ships and 41 Spanish and French ships in a massive naval engagement that took place during the Napoleonic Wars. Admiral Lord Nelson and Admiral Collingwood of the British led their 27 ships of the line, that is, ships designed with a large number of cannons down the port and starboard sides and really designed to fight broadside to broadside. They took these against the Franco-Spanish fleet. Arrayed against Nelson and Collingwood was Admiral Pierre-Charles Villeneuve and Admiral Gravina, with 33 French and Spanish ships of the line. In the end, the Franco-Spanish fleet lost 22 ships and the British lost none. This victory was due in part to Nelson's departure from the prevailing tactic of sailing your line of ships past the enemy and raking the opposing side with your cannons. The winner was still floating. The victory also confirmed the naval supremacy Britain had established during the course of the 18th century. In this battle, Nelson split his column into 2 and had them sail directly through the Spanish and French line of ships. It was a risky tactic, but succeeded beyond what I think even Nelson would have expected. The superior training and practice of the British ships in maneuvering and firing, combined with this new tactic, definitely won the day. Britain lost almost 1,670 sailors in the battle, but the combined Franco-Spanish fleet lost nearly 15,000 sailors. And while the battle confirmed the supremacy of the British Navy, the price paid in lives by the countries involved was pretty darn high. Nelson himself was killed in the battle. Admiral Villeneuve was taken prisoner and sent to England, where, incidentally, he actually attended the funeral of Admiral Lord Nelson. Spanish Admiral Federico Gravina was injured in the battle as well, and although he escaped capture, he later died of his wounds. Admiral Villeneuve was released late in 1805 to return to France, but he was not allowed back in the Navy and was later found dead by suicide in his hotel. However, the 6 stab wounds in the Admiral's chest indicated that maybe it was a really pissed off Napoleon that had killed him for his supposed failure. In truth, it wasn't Villeneuve's poor command. It was the French sailors' lack of practical experience and training that lost the battle, the men's lives, and cost Gravina and Villeneuve their lives as well.
By these waves, this is what's happening. And that's not what a full sail should look like. Watch your head. So what he does, he rigs a line from the bottom of the boom, if he can catch it, through the pulley at the bottom of the stays, and then ties it on a cleat down here.
The currents around Cape Trafalgar are crazy. We get the prevailing winds from the east, the Atlantic swell from the west, and a strong current depending on the tides racing around this point, north or south. All that makes for confused and really interesting seas. As you can see from the chart plotter, the tide vector versus the wind vector versus our headings are all really different, and that's why we're getting all this rolling and slatting of the sails.
Skies and calm seas now. What's changed?
Well, when you say calm, we're still getting a nice roll in coming across our beam, which means we're rolling around with that. We've put the main away in order to stop the boom from flogging back and forth. You really don't want stuff flogging back and forth. We tried our jibe preventer, and that didn't really stop it. We were still getting a lot of kind of slatting back and forth, so we took that down. We've left the Jenny up to try to get the last breath of wind that seems to be here, and now we're driving under engine. We're still getting some of those combers coming in from the Atlantic. I mean, that way is America. So there's a lot of fetch for the waves to build up.
Before we enter what is to us a new port, we always check our pilot guide, if we have one. Otherwise, we look online before we leave for info at a website like the Cruising Association, or maybe Noonsight or Jim B. Sail.
We quite often see this, where you get a small fishing vessel, maybe not entirely looking where they're going, and they point themselves straight at us. Usually they turn just in time. Fingers crossed. I think into us. We're on a collision course with him currently, Dad.
After a gorgeous sail, we found ourselves at the beginning of the Straits of Gibraltar in the port of Barbate. Safe arrival drinks. Oh, and cake! Join us next time as we cross the infamous Straits of Gibraltar to Africa and Tangier, and then back to Gibraltar. You know, before we had Dwayne Johnson, Gibraltar was the rock.